of the notes.
You are recording them, right?
Yeah, I just started. So I want to talk about one thing, though, that some people seem to be misunderstanding. Can somebody have their table? Does anybody have a handy? You got your hands. Okay, so what some people were having trouble with is this column called effect. The effect is the sound bite for what the hormone does. Okay, so let's do one that you guys are all probably relatively familiar with right now. We're doing the whole TRH, TSH, T3, T4 business, right? What is the effect of TRH? The effect of TRH.
It releases the thyroid hormone.
TRH doesn't do thyroid. Causes the release of TSH from the anterior pituitary. Now let's do the other two so you can hear how the effects sound. Okay. Now TSH. What is the effect of TSH? Causes the release of T3 and T4 from the thyroid. Now let's finish the story by saying what is the effect of T3 and T4? It's not cause or inhibit the release of anything. It is what? Yes, increases metabolism in most tissues. So do you hear it's just like a sound bite for each one? So yeah, cell division, protein synthesis, that kind of stuff. Growth hormone does that too.
So is that what you want in the effect then?
Yeah, so what I want in the effect is that little blurb, that little sound bite that allows you to grab onto what the hormone does. Okay? I don't want it to be a paragraph. I want it to be a sound bite so that you can remember it, right? Realizing that, of course, it's probably going to be more complicated than that. If you get into some clinical specialty, you'll be like, oh, yeah, T3 and T4 does more than that, right? But you have to have something to grab onto. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a sound bite. It shouldn't be longer than phrase. Okay?
So do you think that will be the soundbite for T3 and T4?
Yeah, T3 and T4 go together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the other one, I can't say it.
TSH?
No, for thyroid.
Calcitonin?
Yes.
Calcitonin lowers blood calcium. That's its job, right?
And that's what you want.
That's the effect. Yes, that's its primary job. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. What were you asking, Brady?
Just the clinical significance.
You only have
Like
clinical
disease-
significance
diseases or
for some of them. You don't have it for all of them. So just if we talked about a disease or a disorder, then you'll have a clinical significance, and if we didn't, you don't. Right? But of course, once you go on to pathophysiology, and apparently these three are going on to pathophysiology next semester, all you'll have to do is add in more diseases, right? Like you got the whole damn thing set up, you just have to add in more diseases. Does that make sense to you guys? So, and I really don't care if you use the table. The only thing the table is for is that there's a lot to remember, and do you have all of the stuff down, right? You can do it any way you want. I just made the table because sometimes people were like, I don't know what the hell I have to know about every hormone. Well, now you do. You know what you have to know. Okay? All right, so we're going to finish the hormones today. We are going to start in a very familiar place, and that is the adrenal medulla should not be confusing to you because you guys already know what is released from the adrenal medulla mostly. Epinephrine and norepinephrine, and you know it because, of course, we talked about the autonomic nervous system. Which branch of the autonomic nervous system is responsible for stimulating hormone release from the adrenal medulla? Which branch of the autonomic nervous system? Sympathetic, right. Sympathetic, right. Does that make sense? So sympathetic nervous system. So all this is going to do is to reinforce what you already learned about the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system is going to directly stimulate the adrenal medulla. And remember, whenever you have a cortex and a medulla, the medulla is on the inside, right? The adrenal medulla is going to release primarily epinephrine, but also a little bit of norepinephrine, a little bit of dopamine, okay? And let's back up and talk about what you already know and you were already tested on. Were you tested on the autonomic on the last test or no? Okay, so autonomic nervous system, you know the three primary targets for the norepinephrine from the sympathetic nervous system. What are they? No, not yet. So glands, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. Okay, now here's going to be the difference. When I release it as a hormone, it is not limited to just those three targets, yes? Because if you release something as a hormone, it can go anywhere it damn well pleases, yes? Okay, So, but the effects are going to be similar. So what is the advantage? Why the hell do you release it from a hormone if you could release it as a neurotransmitter? Well, a tiger walks into the room, it's going to take me more than 10 seconds to get away from the tiger, right? And what's going to happen when it takes me more than 10 seconds to get away from the tiger is it's really expensive to release a neurotransmitter over and over again. Yeah? Yes? Action potentials every damn time. How about instead of doing that, I just zap the adrenal medulla and dump a similar chemical into the bloodstream? Does the heart care where norepinephrine or epinephrine came from? No, it'll still increase its rate, right? So it gets there. It's going to enhance the fight or flight response and prolong it. Yeah? In addition, it's also going to support it because you are not going to be limited to those targets. So, first, epinephrine is the primary thing that's released from the adrenal medulla. A little bit of norepinephrine, a little bit of dopamine. Dopamine's primary function is to cause some vasoconstriction. It's not particularly important from here. FYI, not that it's also like super important, but when you release norepinephrine, when you release those as neurotransmitters, it's a 4-to-1 ratio of norepi to epi. When you release them as hormones, it's the other way. But they interact with the same receptors, so it doesn't really matter that much, right? So they're going to the same receptors. Okay, so they're released as a direct response to sympathetic stimulation, fight or flight, and exercise. Yeah? And they're going to go to your typical 3 target organs, cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. But then they're going to go more places. And these other places that they are going to go, conceptualize this for me, are going to help support your metabolism to get you away from the tiger. So what do you think they should do to your circulating nutrient levels? Increase or decrease them? Increase. Yes? It's going to take me a minute to get away from the tiger. And so now, in addition to doing what I do with cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands, I'm going to have some metabolic effects. And the metabolic effects should make sense. The metabolic effects of epinephrine are going to be, go to the liver, cause glycogenolysis. Yeah? And then dump the sugar into the bloodstream. Does that make sense? And in order to make sure that you've got enough nutrients for other things to burn, how about we also go to the fat and cause lipolysis? So I can dump fatty acids into the bloodstream. Good? And then, how about I go specifically to skeletal muscle? And I can't get to skeletal muscle as a neurotransmitter, right? It's not hooked up that way. But I can get there as a hormone. I'm going to go specifically to skeletal muscle, and I'm going to have 2 impacts on skeletal muscle. I'm going to cause glycogenolysis of the stored glycogen inside skeletal muscle, and I'm going to increase the rate of cellular respiration in skeletal muscle. What is that going to do to that skeletal muscle? Glycogenolysis and increased what? It's going to make more ATP for contraction, right? Because you got to get away from a damn tiger. So basically what it does is dumps nutrients into the bloodstream and then says, skeletal muscle, you behave very, very efficiently. Yeah? That's the impact. Does that make conceptual sense? Okay, so that's the hormonal impacts of epinephrine that you don't have when you just release it as norepinephrine. Okay? So it's in addition to the other stuff that it does. Okay, so everybody all right with that? You good? Okay. So the chemical class of adrenal medulla hormones, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine are all water-soluble amines. Good? And you should be able to fill in that part in your table. Okay, so now we're ready to go to the pancreas. Okay? The pancreas, luckily you know something about it because we've been kind of referring to it since the beginning of the semester. Remember where your pancreas is, right? It's just below your stomach in the first curve of your small intestine. It's kind of anatomically unimpressive. It just looks like mesentery, like extra lumpy mesentery or something. Can't live without it. It releases 3 hormones. 2 of them are really easy to understand, and the other one just primarily regulates the other 2. So, pancreatic hormones. One of the reasons, by the way, that people get confused about the pancreas is that pancreas has exocrine functions and endocrine functions. I don't care about the exocrine functions right now, but let's just acknowledge them and then we can move on. The exocrine functions are that the pancreas secretes digestive enzymes, primarily proteases, and dumps them into the digestive tract to help you break down proteins. We're not interested in that right now. We are interested in the endocrine function, and the endocrine functions are that it makes hormones and dumps them into the bloodstream. Okay? So the hormones that we are going to be interested in come primarily from this region of the pancreas. So here's a pancreas, and if you take a chunk of it, what we will see is the pancreas has this weird little arrangement. in which you've got an island of cells surrounded by exocrine cells. This little island, also shown right there, is called the islet of Langerhans, which is fun to say, or the pancreatic islet, which is what they're changing the name to now. And so it's easy to remember because the outer portion is exocrine function, which we don't care about, and the inner portion is endocrine function. The cells that we're going to be interested in here are alpha cells, beta cells, and delta cells. Okay, so let's talk about what this one does. The pancreas is not hard to understand. The pancreas secretes primarily two hormones that you're going to be concerned with, insulin and glucagon, right? Which one do you need when your glucose is gone? Glucagon. Okay, so you guys tell me, and I'm not going to show you the flow chart. I'm going to like build it with you. What do you think the trigger is for the release of glucagon? Yes, exactly. Low blood glucose. Do you see that you don't actually have to remember that if you actually understand it? You don't have to memorize it? Okay, so low blood glucose is going to be detected by the pancreas. Okay, so stick with me here. And then the pancreas is going to go to the places in the body that can fix that. Where? Primary target is the liver. Yeah, you guys with me? Do you guys understand why it would be the liver? And what's the liver going to do in response? The liver is going to do glycogenesis. Yeah? And then when you run out of glycogen, what's it going to do? Gluconeogenesis, if necessary. And the net effect of both of those is to do what? Increase blood glucose. Does that make sense to you guys? What's the feedback mechanism? What do you think? It is. It's glucose that feeds back, meaning it's not glucagon. Wait. Pancreas. Forgot the glucagon there. Glucagon goes to the liver. So glucagon is not what feeds back. It's changing the blood glucose level that feeds back. Does that make sense? Okay. Glycogenolysis and gluconeogenesis. Everybody okay with that? So let me show you the figure that they have in your textbook, and don't let yourself get thrown by it because it's not as bad as it looks. Okay, so look over on the right side here. Low levels of blood plasma glucose cause the alpha cells in the pancreas to secrete glucagon. And then the liver responds by increasing glycogenolysis, and then when it runs out, it'll do gluconeogenesis, and that'll increase plasma glucose. At the same time, by the way, that also causes you to do lipolysis, break down fat, because it allows you to use the lipids for some things and the sugars for other things. So you don't have to memorize this one, but it's consistent, right? It's circulating nutrient levels. Everybody okay? So when would you release glucagon? Between meals. Yeah? So if you ate breakfast, but you haven't eaten lunch because you got too busy, you are releasing glucagon right now to keep your circulating glucose levels high. Is that okay? Okay. Now, let's talk about the beta cells. Same organ, different cells. Beta cells in the pancreas secrete insulin. And insulin, we already kind of know what it does, but I want to build the feedback loop, okay? What is insulin's primary job? What does it do? Lowers blood sugar. Good. So keep that in mind. That's its primary job. That's also the blurb that goes in effect, okay? So what do you think the trigger is for insulin release? Yes. High blood glucose is detected by the pancreas. Pancreas definitely does not release glucagon because that would not help, right? The pancreas releases insulin. And as far as the targets for insulin, almost every cell in the body is a target for insulin. So let's talk about, and I'll show you the figure in just a second. Almost all cells, not all of them. And what do the cells do that decreases the sugar level? Absorbs. Yes. Increase glucose uptake. So basically what I'm saying is the cells take the sugar that they're swimming in the extracellular fluid, and they move it into the intracellular fluid for use in cellular respiration. Yeah? And that drops the blood glucose level. Good? And so the impact of doing that is going to be to do what? Lower blood glucose. Yes? And what's the feedback mechanism? Yeah, it's glucose. Yeah? Okay, so, but I want to talk about a couple of other things before we talk about diabetes. I want you to see what else would be consistent with this. See if you can listen to this question and come up with an answer. I will tell you that insulin is also the trigger for one of these two processes. It's either the trigger for glycogenesis or glycogenolysis. Which one? Yeah, it's what makes you store glycogen because you actually get it released when your blood sugar is high, right? So how do you restore into your glucose savings account? It's insulin that does that. Does that make sense? Also, it decreases glycogenolysis right in the liver. It decreases gluconeogenesis in the liver. And any idea what would be consistent that it could do to fat? Yeah, one of the things that they're figuring out that pisses everybody off. So this is a big picture of what insulin does. This is the part that you have to memorize. These are other parts you don't have to memorize. But okay, so one of the things that they've figured out is that it is actually insulin that is the primary trigger for lipogenesis. So when are you most likely to get fat? It's really when you eat a combination of high sugars, especially in combination with high fat, because you release insulin and it causes you to store fat. Isn't that interesting? So it's the high sugar, high fat diet that gets you. Apparently, if you go high fat, high protein, you have way, way less fat storage than if you go high sugar, even if it's the same number of calories. You just don't have the hormonal trigger for lipogenesis in the absence of high levels of insulin. So insulin seems to be a biggie with like jacking up your metabolism hardcore. Okay, so now I want to talk about when this process breaks. Okay, so let's talk about diabetes. Now, you should, because diabetes is a phenomenal example of physiology and homeostasis. You need to make sure that if you are not a textbook reader, you read about type 1 and type 2 diabetes mellitus in some reputable source, meaning it should not be some Joe Blow's anti-vaccination webpage. It probably should end with edu, right, or .gov. So read about it however you need to read about it because you're going to be asked to talk about it, right? So we're going to talk about it now, but however you need to reinforce that, you can. Okay, so first off, these two are diabetes mellitus. Diabetes, again, means you pee like a racehorse. Mel means sweet, okay? So you are going to pee out a whole bunch of really sugary pee. And that's usually one of the first diagnostics that occurs, right? You're going to pee a lot, and then they're going to test your pee. Now nobody has to taste it, thank goodness, right? There's like a little dipstick test. What? Yeah, they used to taste it. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were joking, and then I'm thinking,
No, they used to taste it, right?
Well, you can smell it.
Yeah, you can smell it, and also it attracts more flies.
Yeah.
But like if you have to sit and wait for it to attract flies, so you put like 2 petri dishes, because they couldn't tell if it was mellitus or insipidus. You put 2 petri dishes out on a windowsill, and one of them will attract way more flies because of the sugar. But if you don't have time to wait for that, then somebody has to taste it. And the reason you're in college is because it's not the person with the degree that has to taste it, right? That's why, right? Okay. So you're going to pee a lot. It's going to have sugar in it, and you'll figure out why it has sugar in it in just a second. It's because something in this system is broken, okay? So I have type 1 diabetes mellitus and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Type 1 diabetes mellitus, let's talk about that one first. It's also called IDDM or T1DM. IDDM is insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus.
So type 1 would be like you have to take an insulin shot.
Yes, we're going to talk about that in just a second too. So this one would need insulin shots. Here's what happens with this one. They used to say that this disorder was either genetic or autoimmune, but they have changed that recently. The tune has changed. They think it's always autoimmune, But what can happen is you can have a genetic predisposition to autoimmune disorders, which might manifest as type 1 diabetes or lupus or, I don't know, a bunch of different things. MS, a bunch of different things, okay? So it also used to be called juvenile diabetes because a lot of times people will get it in childhood, right? And then they're going to have it for the rest of their life. So here's what happens with this one. Something, genetics, autoimmune, or a combination of the two of them, destroys the beta cells of your pancreas and they no longer can produce adequate amounts of insulin. So here is where you break it, right here, okay? Pancreas can't secrete adequate amounts of insulin, okay? And so what happens, of course, if I am an untreated type 1 diabetic and I eat a meal and I can't secrete adequate amounts of insulin, what can you tell me about my blood sugar level? It's going to stay really high, but that is only part of the problem. The other part of the problem is to think about what the cells are doing. Because the cells are starving, even though they are swimming in food, but they can't take it in. Does that make sense? And so you can get, with untreated type 1 diabetes, a progressive deterioration, right, of tissues, right, as they are undergoing sort of these booms and crashes in which they're flushed and then they don't have anything. It's especially problematic in tissues that are non-regenerative, that can't go through mitosis. So if you kill off a cell, it ain't coming back. Think nervous tissue and think heart, right, nervous tissue and cardiovascular. So the suites of symptoms associated with diabetes, either type 1 or type 2, you could just list them all damn day. You're basically starving your cells, so you are going to depress your immune system, you're going to depress healing, you're going to have potential diabetic neuropathy because your nerves are not working properly. You can have the possibility of blindness, right? It will cause kidney damage and potential kidney failure. A lot of people on dialysis are on it because of diabetes. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Kidney failure, it's really hard to deliver all that sugar to your kidneys all the time. It trashes your kidneys. In addition, one of the other things that I didn't think about for a really long time is all of that sugar circulating through your blood vessels all the time increases your likelihood of atherosclerosis and arteriosclerosis. It makes all of your cholesterol gunk up your blood vessels, so it leads to hypertension and all of that kind of stuff. So the bad news about either type 1 or type 2 diabetes mellitus is that if you were diagnosed with either one before the age of 12, it reduces your life expectancy by 17 years. So these are massive, massive, these are like lifetime management problems, right? If you think like being a vegan or having celiac is hard, try being a type 1 diabetic. So you have to really be careful about how you manage this. So the problem is that you can't make enough of it. What is the most common treatment, of course, for type 1 diabetes? Insulin shots in combination with very, very carefully regulated diet and exercise patterns. Why is exercise a big deal? Exercise is phenomenal for regulating your blood sugar because when you exercise, your skeletal muscles take up a whole bunch of sugar in the absence of insulin. It's not insulin dependent, that sort of exercise take up of sugar. So people who are diabetic but also very, very active tend to be much better at regulating their blood sugar, okay? But the diet also, making sure that you take in not excessive amounts of sugars, right? So for instance, my friend who is type 1 diabetic with an insulin pump, if we're going out for a beer, she has to, for instance, look at her beer, figure out how much it's going to impact her glucose level, and tell her insulin pump before she does it, so her sugars don't go up and down. And really carefully regulate that. So this is type 1 diabetes. You generally treat it with insulin injections because insulin's a peptide, and so you can't ingest it and have it have functionality. So insulin injections, right? And the pump, if you've got good insurance and you've been very, very successful at regulating your insulin and sugar levels for a while, then sometimes the insurance company will approve the pump. My friend, she had to keep her insulin and sugar levels within a certain range that they were electronically monitoring. She had to do it for a full year before they would approve an insulin pump. Yeah. So she sleeps with it. What? She has it right here. She wears it on her clothes. But you can either have one injection site or two injection site pumps. The one injection site is when you tell it your glucose level, you type in your glucose level, and it injects insulin based on your glucose level. The two injection site ones is when it tests the glucose level and automatically monitors the insulin level. right?
Hers is
Um,
obviously one.
Hers is 1. She actually had a 2. She got approved for that, but the 1 works better for her. She, like, it seems to be.
Where does it go though? Like,
She has to sleep with it. It's like
It goes in
you.
your
Is it-
stomach, it's like in your stomach's.
It's just like injected into your abdomen, but she sleeps with it. So like,
Okay. It's
You know,
tiny,
if
it's
you get-
tiny.
I sleep with a favorite pillow, right? That no matter which direction I roll, it goes with me, right? I've got a pillow that I cuddle. And if my husband takes my damn pillow before I get up there, I will pull it out while he is sleeping.
After you punch
Well, he's 6'6", we are.
it. Right.
I could never punch him. But so she has gotten so used to this that it's just like what she sleeps with, right? She just like rolls around with it and has to sleep with it. So, and she can put it on her pajamas unless she's naked, and then she can't. So,
Okay.
so anyway, that's type 1.
I have
Go
a
ahead.
question. Why do you, maybe I'm just looking, why would you go blind? Why would that be?
Retina of the eye, incredibly energetically expensive and really dependent on glucose concentration. It's also really, really susceptible to blood pressure changes, and the blood pressure changes happen with diabetes quite often. So it's like a double whammy.
Okay, and 2, I was watching, Halle Berry has type 1.
Type 1? Oh, I
Yes,
didn't know that.
and she said that's why she exercises.
Yeah.
3 or 4 hours a day.
Oh my God.
And I wonder if that's
Oh.
why, because of what you just said with the exercise.
It's working for her.
It's working for her.
Go ahead.
So is it hypersecretion or hyposecretion?
It's hyposecretion, too little, right? Okay, so if there are a couple other possibilities for treatments. Most of them are still in clinical trials. You can have a pancreatic islet transplant from a cadaver, and sometimes those are not rejected. And embryonic stem cells have worked in a few clinical trials as well. Okay, so now let's talk about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is abbreviated T2DM or NIDDM, non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. Okay, it commonly, when I was growing up, it was called adult onset diabetes. We don't call it that anymore because in America we started giving it to our kids as young as 7 years old. So we'll talk about that one. So this one is not broken here. The problem with this one is that you continually put the glucose in and you end up breaking the feedback loop. Let's talk about how you break the feedback loop. So let's talk about the South, right? So I'm from the South, Nikki's from the South, you're from the South? Oh, of course you are.
Mississippi.
Huh? Georgia. Okay, so let's talk about the South. So let's talk about the South. So, and we can do that because I can make fun of me, right? If I make fun of you, I'm discriminating. If I make fun of me, it's so, in the South, the typical diet and exercise pattern in many, many people, especially people who are not super wealthy, is low activity patterns and really crappy eating habits. Lots and lots of sugars, lots and lots of fat, lots and lots of salt. Okay, so you got a lot of fat people, but it's not the fat thing that gets you. It is in this particular situation. So where I grew up, it was not at all uncommon to know somebody who drank 6 or 8 Dr. Peppers a day. One of the things that I need to tell you about drinking your calories is that when you drink your calories, you do not get the satiation response. So it's on top of whatever calories you're taking in to eat. So that's really important to understand, is that liquids don't give you the satiation response. Evolutionarily, they shouldn't, right? Right? So primarily you were taking in your liquids with very few calories except for when you were a baby. So those are generally on top of all of the other calories. But let's just focus on the sugar. So you drink 6 Dr. Peppers a day, and so what's going to happen is you have a repeated activity of increasing your blood glucose, increasing your insulin, trying to get your cells to take it up and drop your blood glucose. And that's all well and good, and it works just fine until you drink the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. Fast forward, not 1 year, not 5 years, but 10 years, 15 years, or 20 years, and you have done this. What you end up doing is you have failed miserably to regulate your sugar levels because you won't stop taking it in, right? Which will make you have really high levels of insulin almost all the time, yes? And then when you have really high levels of insulin almost all the time, what are you going to do to the insulin receptors on the target cells? Downregulate. You're going to downregulate those. And that means that now anytime you're not drinking a Dr. Pepper or anytime you're sleeping, and your sugars levels drop, normal levels of insulin will not cause a target cell response. So they are down-regulated. So what ends up happening is you get these booms of sugars and crashes of sugars, and booms of sugars and crashes of sugars. and your cells start starving, right? Your cells are starving. And you get all of the changes that we explained, all of the symptoms associated with type 1 diabetes. In addition to that, you probably have hypertension, and you are probably fat, okay? Because you don't tend to get this by eating a whole hell of a lot of carrots, right? It's not what you get, right? So you are probably heavy. Now, can you have type 2 diabetes and not be heavy? Yeah, if you have a really high metabolism, right? Eventually, you're going to be a fat person. Almost everybody is destined to be a fat person. So, at least in the South. So, we have all of the same problems, but who gave you type 2 diabetes? You did. Probably with, no, not your mama. Unless she started out giving you Dr. Pepper in your bottle, and then she did it to you. But generally, you gave it to yourself as an adult, right? And most of it was just because you didn't know how to eat. A lot of people do not know how to eat or why they should eat in certain ways. So it still reduces your life expectancy really dramatically. And it's very hard to regulate. So what do? What does the doctor tell you when you go in and your blood sugar levels and your insulin levels are really high? They say you're pre-diabetic. What should you do? Diet and exercise. How likely is it that people do that when you tell them? No. So few actually do that. They're like, don't tell me what to do. I'm American. Pew, pew, pew.
That's exactly what they do.
I know that's what they do.
So they make it worse and go to type 1.
They make it worse, yeah, and then they ask for the pill. They ask for metformin, and metformin artificially regulates your blood sugar level. It's not very effective at doing it. It's not like your feedback mechanism. Kind of puts off the worst, though, for a little bit. So that puts off the worst. And then the next thing that happens is you exhaust your pancreas, and you end up being an insulin resistant, yes, and then insulin dependent diabetic. So you have to inject insulin, but do you get to inject normal amounts of it? No. And that is trashing your kidneys, by the way. It's super duper hard on your kidneys. So now the tragedy about this one is that, like I said, we have given it to our kids. People didn't used to get it until their 30s or 40s. We've given it to our kids as early as 7 years old. And if a kid gets type 2 diabetes, whose fault is it? It's the parents' fault. That's whose fault it is right there. It is the parents' fault because I know that's all they want to eat. They just want to eat sugar, right? But part of parenting is to tell them not to touch that and not to eat that, right? So kids are getting it really young, and it reduces their life expectancy. And of course, the stress angle of, for instance, poverty increases the likelihood because of cortisol secretion. So people who, and also in addition, if you are really poor, really bad food is really, really a lot cheaper than really good food. So it's kind of an interesting one. We have now started exporting that from the United States to other countries. So as we export our foods and our fast food, for instance, Japan used to have instances of type 2 diabetes, which were almost unheard of. And over about the last 15 years, their instance has crawled up, as it has in Western Europe and part of Eastern Europe. So we're spreading our, American problem. Kind of an